Hey there all, how are we doing? Good to be back with you. So we're carrying on our kind of back to basics. I would say this is like progression on those basics, but going over some of the kind of fundamental things that I refer to lots in my sessions and making sure we're all on the same place. Today we're going to be talking running, focusing on our running. Even if you don't run, everything we do is still really good training for everything else in terms of strength and conditioning, but it's going to be particularly relevant if you run. So we're going to begin with a run focus warm up. Now I know that all of you go out and do your runs always doing a full mobility warm up beforehand, so you don't need to know what I'm about to say because you're doing it anyway, but just in case, we're just going to recap. So I'm thinking, I think, as you know, I would always say it's a good idea to do a mobility warm-up before you run. That doesn't just mean you run a little bit faster or a little bit slower before you start running. It means we're working on the range of motion at the joint. So we get more out of our workout, out of our running, so that we are less likely to get injured, so we can work on getting better speed, better technique by having that full range of motion. So supposing you've already left the house and then you're like, oh crap, I haven't done my warm-up. So this is a warm-up you could do in the park. Maybe you've gone to park run, you're waiting for it to start, you're hanging around for a few minutes. Here's something you could be doing before you start your run. So we're going to stand with our legs far apart, front to back. Let's take left leg behind us, right leg in front. You're up on your toe on that back leg, and we're just going to tuck the tailbone under. So tuck under, hold for a second, release. Tuck under, hold for a second, release. So we're working on loosening up this back hip. We spend, as you know, because I say it all the time, we spend all our time seated, so we end up very tight at the hips. So we want to be able to just loosen up this hip, partly to get greater range of motion because we need that for everyday life. We don't want to be stuck in that kind of seated position. We want that range of motion at the hip. So even if we weren't going to go out and run, we'd still want to be doing something like this. But particularly if we're running, when we're running, you carry on just doing that tuck under. When we're running, we want to be able to get this leg back behind us. We want to be able to get the leg into extension. So as we run, we want to run forward and this back leg stays behind us. What we don't want to do that is just to tilt the whole pelvis forwards. Then we're going to be tipping that water out the front, and more to the point, we're not engaging that glute behind. If you think about it, as you go into that tuck under, you can feel as you tuck under, you're using that glute, you're engaging that glute. Our glutes are our most powerful muscle, most fatigue resistant and powerful muscle in the body, but they also stabilize our hips. They make sure our knees where it should be, they make sure our hips are where they should be. So often when we're getting injured, it's because we're not using these glutes at the back. So loosen up the hips so we can use the glutes. Okay, staying in that position, tucking under, very gently, not forcing anything. We're just going to gently push the weight forwards. If you're getting any sort of sensitivity, uncomfortableness in the hip, reduce the range of motion. So we're just gently tucking under, pushing forwards. So now we're working on that, being able to get our weight forwards with the leg back behind us, so that as we're running, and if you imagine your running technique, or your kind of good run form, what we're looking for, and I can't do it very effectively here, but we're looking effectively for that front shin to be parallel with the back leg. So the front shin's tucked under, leg goes behind us. That's our kind of in the middle of the air, that's our good stride position. What we so often see is instead that this leg flies out in front of us because we're trying to find length at the front of the stride. That can lead to overstriding. Let's swap sides while I carry on talking. So same, just swap sides, other leg tucking under, not pushing forward yet, just tucking under. So we want length in our stride. The further we go with each stride, in theory, the faster we're going to be going, obviously relative to the speed that we do that as well. But what we don't want to do is try and find the length at the front of the stride. What we actually want is to find the length at the back of the stride. So being able to get this hip extension behind us with our glutes engaged, so true hip extension as the leg comes back behind us, is going to help get that longer stride, so therefore help us to go faster, but more to the point is going to help us reduce the chance of injury because we're not trying to find the length at the front, throwing our foot at the front and then ending up with all of our force going into that front knee, slowing us down, but also ending up in lots of kind of impact injury. Okay, so from there, we're pushing forwards. If this isn't making sense, if you haven't really kind of thought about or talked about run technique before, don't worry, I'm sure I'll be talking about it in future sessions. This is a kind of flying intro, but I want you to get the idea of why it's important to get this hip extension at the back so that we can get that length in our stride so we've got the full range of motion. That's the main thing you need to take away here. If I had no time to do anything else, that would be my number one. In terms of a run warm-up, you might know you've got specific issues you need to work on, but just generally, if I only had a few minutes, that's probably the first thing I would do, the main thing I would do. If I had a bit more time, and hopefully you would, we'll go into, so if you just take your legs out side to side, and we're just going into a side lunge. Don't worry too much about your technique. We're going to talk much more about side lunge technique later on in the session, but for now, just going side to side and see if you can get a little bit deeper as you go, not forcing anything. Shouldn't feel uncomfortable. We're just loosening up. So loosening up the muscle down the inside there, loosening up at the joint. This would probably be my number 2. So I'm doing these in order of priority. If we're tight down the inside here, we struggle to engage these muscles, these glute muscles at the side. And if we're struggling to engage those glute muscles at the side, again, they are the ones that are helping to keep our hips level, helping to keep our knee kind of tracking where it should be. They're supporting where we want things to be in the run. So we definitely want them to be working for us. So just loosening up these guys is going to help. And lots of us, we tend to hold too much tightness in these muscles. We kind of end up clenching onto them. So we just want to relax things down a bit. Okay, from there, we're going to loosen up the ankles. So this is easier to do against a wall. If you haven't got a wall, a convenient wall, you can do it without a wall, but it's going to be easier to do with a wall. So I'm going to take my foot about a foot away from a wall, and then I'm going to push my knee forwards. So I'm just pushing that knee forwards, and while I do this, I'm making sure that my foot on the floor is facing straight forwards. I don't want my toes turned out to the sides. I want to keep my hips facing forwards, so don't turn my hips to each side. And then once I've got that, I'm going to start going towards the big toe, way over, straight forwards, and then towards the little toe. Towards the little toe is going to be the hardest one. Don't let the heel come off the floor, don't turn the foot. So we're just going left, forwards, right. So bending a little bit extra maybe on that one where you go over the little toes, because that's the hardest one. If you're hitting the wall with your knee, take the foot further away. You don't actually have to touch the wall at this stage, just something to aim towards. And we're working on our ankle mobility, so the ankle joint, making sure we've got good range there, and also loosening up that calf muscle. You might be feeling it in the calf, particularly that lower part of the calf. You might be feeling it more in the ankle. If you're feeling it a lot in the ankle, let's swap legs now. Grab your thigh band, kind of if you're feeling a pinch at the front of the ankle, grab the thigh band, put it round the front of the ankle of the one that you're working, and then just do exactly the same, but now I've got that thigh band around the front of the ankle. That's helping to keep that bone in position. If we get that pinching at the front, it's because that bone at the front is kind of going forwards in the joint. Use that thigh band just pinned with the leg behind. The leg behind isn't doing anything. It's just on the ground for balance, and in the case of the band, helping to support it. You don't need to use the band unless you're getting that pinching at the front of the ankle. And we're doing those 3 positions again, spending a little bit longer as we go over the little toes. Loosening up the ankle. Okay, from there, we're going to go, if you grab a chair, or you imagine you're in the park, you're grabbing a park bench. And we're going to put one foot up onto your park bench. And then we're just going to, so heel down, and we're leaning forward. So getting a stretch into the hamstring there. And then you can go with your arms. We're reaching to the left. We're reaching forwards. We're reaching to the right. So, and as you move the arms to the left and the right, you'll just feel that stretch through the hamstring slightly change. Now keep the knee soft. This isn't about straight leg. Often when we try and stretch our hamstring, we end up actually stretching the back of the knee, which is not the objective here. So keep the knee soft, or keep the knee bent, and lean forward so we're getting into that hamstring. Swap sides. And yes, those of you who are going, but this is a stretch. I thought I wasn't meant to stretch before exercise. We're not doing a deep stretch. We're just loosening it up. And we're moving through, so we're doing that kind of mobility focus. But yeah, we are stretching it. If it feels tight, it could be impeding your run. If you were going to do a time trial, I wouldn't stretch before, because it could reduce your power. But if you're just doing a normal run, I don't care if I go a few seconds slower, if I'm actually doing a better run, less likely to get injured, building the muscle in the way that I want to, so that over time I'm going to be getting faster. So don't go out running when your body feels like everything's too tight to move, because you're not going to run as you want to. Last set. Lovely. Then we're going to sit down on our park bench and we're going to do our thoracic rotation. Now, if the park bench was wet and you didn't get this one hit, not the end of the world. But a good idea to be doing some thoracic rotation throughout the week anyway, even if it's not as part of your run warm-up. So I'm sitting on my bench. I'm going to keep my bum where it is. I don't want my hips to be shifting. So keep the knees facing forwards. Then imagine you've got a kind of, what do you call it, like a pin through your head, down through your spine, down to your bum. So that stays straight. I'm not going to lean forwards. I'm not going to have my shoulders shifting. Then from there, I'm going to turn to one side as far as I can, not forcing it and not letting those knees follow. Keep my hips facing forwards. And then turn to the other side. Now, what we're not trying to do here is to get our shoulders to turn. It doesn't matter if they do, but that's not the objective. We're trying to work on that thoracic rotation, this mid-spine, the same one that we normally do, kneeling on all fours and turning our chest to one side and the other. So what I'm interested in is how much of my chest can I get to that side? If my shoulders go all the way, really that's not the goal. It's how much of this mid-spine, the chest, can I get to turn? So imagine I'm taking a photo with a camera tied to the front of my chest. How far round to that side can it see? Making sure I'm still sitting tall, making sure I'm not rolling in, and then to the other side. And I'm pretty convinced that I don't get as far round on this side, so I know I need to spend a little bit longer here. Keeping on breathing, just going for a few seconds to each side. As I say, if you know you're tighter on one side, spend a little bit longer on that side, trying to just ease things through. Keep sitting tall. Keep those knees facing forwards. One more to each side. So that's working on that thoracic rotation, that mid-spine rotation, which is really important in terms of our running, getting that drive through. Okay, so that's all the things I would include. You don't have to do those exact exercises, but those are the kind of things I would include before running. And as I say, unless you have specific issues you know you need to work on, I would probably prioritize them in that order. If you did about 1 kilometer less running because you'd done about 5 minutes of warming up beforehand, I think that would be time worth spent. So don't let yourself fall into that trap of, oh, I haven't got time to do a warm up. Think about the quality of the run that's going to follow. Think about how you're going to get the most out of that run. Generally, doing a slightly better warm up is going to get you a better run. So if you don't have time to do both, take a few minutes out of the run. But as I say, prioritizing that order. But if you know one of those felt particularly hard, you know you've had particular issues in the past, you know you've got really poor ankle mobility or something, I'd work on that as a priority. From there, still out in the park, or waiting for park run to start, whatever it is, a few things that you can do just to get the glutes engaging. So number one, really easy except you might need to hold on to something for balance, but easy to do, is your knee hug. So if we stand on our left leg, hug our right knee up towards our chest. And what you don't want to be doing is hugging it up and kind of leaning forwards like that. You want to be coming up, trying to think about growing your head up towards the sky, good posture all the way through. If I can get that knee in as high as I can, within reason, I should feel that left glute working. So I'm focusing on the standing leg, in this case, the left glute working. If you can't feel it, it's probably because you're bent forwards too much. You haven't got that neutral pelvis. So think about tucking under, tucking the tailbone under, to get that glute working. That's a really good way, 30 seconds or something, to get that glute working. If you can't feel it, you can try taking the knee out to the side. Sometimes that helps to get in there better. So just holding there, getting that glute working. Let's swap sides. A, as a way of engaging that glute, and B, as a way of reminding ourselves, and we're going to talk more about this in a bit, but of that posture, and reminding ourselves that it's hard to get that glute working if we're bent forwards like this. So we need to be in that neutral pelvis, nice tall chest, to get the glutes engaging. Okay, another one that we can do, and again, you don't have to do all of this, but they're good things to include or to be thinking about. We're going to go into how we kind of engage our neutral pelvis as we're running. So first of all, we're going to stand on one leg. You could do this on a step in the park, but you can do it just on flat ground. Hold on if you need to. We're going to swing our left leg back behind us, making sure that that is a pull from the glutes The leg comes back behind us. Doesn't matter what it does at the front. It's the back bit that matters. Things to watch out for. We don't want to tip forwards as we go. So we keep standing, torso stays where it is as the leg comes back behind us. And it's not that we're bending at the knee and kicking the foot back. The whole leg is swinging. Really good one to do before swimming as well. If you have a tendency to kick from the hips, have a go doing this to get that kick coming. Sorry, if you have a tendency to kick from the knee, do this to get your kick coming from the hip instead. Swap sides. So you should feel the glute of the moving leg working to pull the leg back behind you. Now from there, we're going to go into what I call my chewing gum walk. Imagine you've got some chewing gum stuck on the bottom of your foot. So I'm going to step forwards, and instead of just lifting that foot that was on the ground, it's going to stay on the ground just a fraction longer than it would normally. Not ages. I'm doing pretty much a normal walk, but the foot stays on the ground for a second longer than it would normally. It should feel very much like what you were just doing with that walk. So I step forwards, I can feel that glute. Step forwards, I can feel the glute. So just walk around in whatever space you've got, feeling that glute, keeping the foot on the ground a tiny second longer than normal. Normal walking, but just the foot stays on the ground longer than normal. Feeling the glute working as the foot goes into extension behind you. And as you can see, this is effectively what we'd be doing, very slowed down version of running. As we drive forwards on the run, that glute is working, controlling that leg behind us, getting that hip extension, getting that control. Okay, let's go again. Swing the leg back behind us. Making sure we're not tipping forwards, making sure we're not bending at the knee. Swap legs. And then into that sticky foot walk again. Making sure we're not feeling it in our lower back. We can often take this in our lower back because we end up tucking under at the back. Instead, we're tucking under at the front. Tuck the tailbone under, hip bones up towards your nose, not down towards your toes. And that's another really nice one to do before you go for a run. So just doing that leg swing and then that sticky foot walk, and then taking that forwards, that idea, that connection you've now got brain to body with that neutral pelvis. Don't try and think about throwing your leg out behind you. That's absolutely not what I want you to take away from this. Don't really think about what the leg's doing behind. Trust in the fact that if we've loosened up that hip joint and we've got the glutes engaging, that's going to follow through. So don't try and get the leg out behind you, but over time, keep doing these sort of drills and that's going to follow through. Okay, from there, we are going to go onto the floor. So we wouldn't be doing this in the park. That's your warm-up done. You can go for your run now if you're in the park. But let's go onto the floor, lying on the floor, and then we're going to push our feet up towards the ceiling. So lying on your back, pushing the feet up towards the ceiling. In future weeks, we might well talk about sort of different versions of this. If you've done it with me before, you can go on to harder versions if you want. But for now, all I want you to be worrying about is this idea of tucking under. So when we talk about the neutral pelvis, we talk about tucking under the glutes, tuck the tailbone under, but I also talk about drawing up at the front. It's this lower core muscles that we're tucking, so drawing the hip bones towards the nose, but thinking now about it coming from the core. So that lower part of the core working, drawing up, and we push the feet up towards the ceiling as we go. So you should have those core muscles working well there. From there, we're going to go into your glute bridge. We haven't been doing this one quite so much recently, so don't worry if you're finding it harder than you did, or if you haven't done these with me at all before. So glute bridge setup. Lying on your back, if you've got your hands on the floor, your heels should be touching your fingers. So you want your heels pretty much up and close to your body as you can. From there, we're going to tuck our tailbone under. We're going to come up, and we're going to make sure we've got a straight line from our knees down to our shoulders. We want to make sure we're not pushing our hips up too high, so we're still tucking under. Hip bones to nose, not to toes. Feel those glutes working. Okay, from there, taking it into single leg, so right leg out straight, left foot on the ground. Even if you can't do a single leg, just give it a go for a second or so, and then you're going to try and build up that second or so over time. But then you take it back into double leg if you need to. So we're going to hold it here, and we're going to hold it here for as long as we can. When I say as long as we can, I mean sensibly as long as we can, listening to our body, not overdoing it. So we're tucking that tailbone under. We're making sure that our hips are level, that we haven't got one sinking down or one out to the side. Imagine somebody looking at you from above. It should look symmetrical. You shouldn't kind of look like a banana shape from above. Making sure that we keep that straight line from the knee down to the shoulder, or from that toe ahead down to the shoulder. Doesn't matter what the straight leg's doing, but think of it all in one line. Make sure you're not waving around the straight leg. We're not kind of using the straight leg to get ourselves up. All the work is being done by the glute on the left-hand side. Now we're trying for 90 seconds here. That was our baseline from a few blocks before. Don't worry if you can't do that. Take a break or go to double leg. Making sure that you're using that glute. Try not to overuse your adductors, the inside of the thigh. You might be feeling tight in your quads. If you're feeling particularly in your quads, you just need to stretch or roll them before these sessions. We've got 10 seconds to go. You'll be feeling it in your core as well. That's supporting. Make sure that hip's not dropping down. So tuck under and down. Lovely. Okay, we're going from there. Remember which side you've done. I said to your left. If you didn't do that, just remember which side you've done. From there, we're going into core. So we're lying on our backs and we're crossing our legs over. So kind of crisscross, right foot over left foot over right leg. It is easier with your feet up here. It is harder with your feet just off the ground. Find where works for you. We're going for 60 seconds. We've got about 45 to go. Make sure you carry on breathing. Don't hold your breath. Make sure you are using your core. If you're feeling in your lower back, tuck, I'm going to say it again, tuck the tailbone under. Hip bones to nose, not to toes. If you're still feeling it in your back, either take a break or take the feet higher to make it easier. But don't just always make it easier. See if you could sort your technique first. 15 seconds to go. Keep breathing. Keep tucking under. Good. And down. Going back to our glute bridge again. So feet nice and close in. Tailbone tucked under. Coming up vertebra by vertebra. Making sure we've got that straight line from the knees down to the shoulder. Into single leg on the right side. And again, if you can't do single leg, just try second or so and try and build it up by a second each time. So going into double leg bridge if you need to, otherwise holding it single leg. Think through those cues I just gave you before. I'll go over them in a minute, but you try and think for them for yourself now. And not just saying the words that I said, but working it through in your own body. What does that mean? Tweaking your position if you need to, based on those cues. So a minute to go. See if you can remember some of those cues, see if you can apply them. So number one, pretty much everything I'm going to say today, hip bones to nose, not to toes. Make sure you know what that means. It's not just a collection of words. We're tucking the tailbone under. Hip bone is coming up towards our nose. It's not pointing down towards our toes. So tuck that tailbone under. That's number one, get that glute working. You should be feeling your right glute working. Number two, imagine I'm looking down on you from above. I want to see a straight line. I don't want to see one hip dropping down or out to the side. No banana shapes, nice and straight, aligned from above. Number three, make sure the hips aren't drooping down. So keep checking, straight line from the knees down to the shoulders, but not by just pushing the hips up in the air and taking it through your lower back, but by tucking the tailbone under. If you are feeling it in your lower back or struggling, you can pull that knee in towards you. That's going to help to keep you in position and just make it a little bit easier. And down. Oh, I wasn't far off the ground there, was I? I went down on the ground and found there wasn't far to go. Okay, we're going back to the core again. And this time we're doing our scissors, different type of scissors, up-down scissors. So just up-down with the legs. Again, easier up here, harder down there. Find where works for you. All the same things, keep breathing, keep working through the core, not the lower back. Keep thinking, hip bones tuck under. Not the hip bone, sorry. Tailbone tucks under, hip bones nose, not toes. If it's getting hard, either take a mini break, come a little bit higher. You could either make the legs do a longer sweep or just keep them small sweep up at the top here. 5 seconds to go. Good work. Okay, so from there, we're going to go into your balance. Balance and posture. Number one, we're going to work on our toe yoga. So if you already know what you're doing with toe yoga, you can just get on with that now. If you're new to this, I'm going to go through it, but I'm going to use my hands to demonstrate because it's a lot easier for you to see my fingers than it is to see my toes. So if you're new to it, I would take your shoes off and I would sit on the floor. Ideally, if you've got like a low step so that you can reach your feet easily. And what you're going to try and do is push your toes, big toes down, lift up your little toes, and then push your little toes down, lift up your big toes. Now, if you've never done it before, some people get it straight off, most people don't. If you've never done it before, don't worry, you will get there. So you're lifting up your big toes, then you're pushing down your big toes, lifting up your little toes. If you can't do that, get your fingers involved. So push down your big toes and literally with your fingers, lift up your little toes. Then push down your little toes with your fingers, lift up your big toes to prove to your brain that's even possible and that they can move independently. And then start trying to do it. So I'm pushing down my big toes and I'm lifting up my little toes. If they're hardly coming off, just give them a little bit of a help with your fingers and then swap. Now, if you're new to it, just trust in the process, you'll get there. Everybody has been at the stage where they're sitting there going, this just doesn't make sense. There's no way this will happen. And then you start to get just a little quiver. It'll probably be on one side more than the other. You can do just one foot at a time. Just really focus. We're trying to build those neural pathways. So the brain, sort of the pathway from the brain down to the muscles, in this case in the feet. So we're trying to build those neural pathways. If you've never been down there, it's like driving down a farm track that nobody's driven down for 10 years before. So you need to clear it away just by practicing it. So brain talking to feet, getting it going, but helping with those fingers so you can start to feel that movement and just keep on working on it. Try and do it while you're sitting at your desk. Just do moving the toes down, even just pushing all of them down and feeling the muscles in your feet that you've probably never even thought about before. Okay, I'm going to leave it there for today, but we'll be working on it loads in future sessions. So hopefully, even if you can't do the toes moving kind of different, the big toe moving independently to the other toes, you've woken up the idea that there's some muscles in your feet that you probably never thought about before. From there, and you can keep your shoes off for this bit, from there, standing on both feet, roll your weight or roll forwards into your toes, roll back to your heels, to your toes, to your heels, and then try and find the point in between where your weight is evenly toe to heel. We'll tend to normally stand with all our weights in our toes, sometimes with all our weight in our heels. I want you evenly balanced between the toes and the heels. I want you to be aware that you've got those muscles in your feet that you can use for controlling your balance, controlling your posture here. Okay, I want to make sure we're not gripping onto your thighs. So we might be kind of perfectly posed there, but we're absolutely squeezing, gripping with our thighs, either between our legs or clenching our thighs. So just relax those legs through to your pelvis. So neutral pelvis, same as we've talked about all the way through the session. So we're not tipping the water out the front, we're not tipping the water out the back. We're just bringing it up to level. Then check on those thighs. Then from there, I want you to think about your rib cage. I want you to float your rib cage above your hips and again, neutral. So I don't want you to tip it. If you think again about your rib cage now being full of water, you don't want to be tipping the water out the front. So if we've got our shoulders round forwards, all the water's tipping out the front, or if we push our hips backwards like that, all the water's tipping out the back. Float the rib cage above the pelvis, neutral. Not tipping the water out the front or the back of the pelvis or the rib cage. From there, we're going to think about our postural muscles around the back of the shoulders. So if you just take your thumbs pointing forwards, turn them out to the side, and then back behind you, that's going to start to light up those muscles around the shoulder blades, thinking shoulder blades together and down. And then from there, thinking about our head, We want our ears above our shoulders. So we don't want our heads craned forward, head just above our shoulders, but a better way of thinking to get there is thinking about making your neck tall. Think about taking the back of the head, not the front of the head. We're not waving our nose in the air. Take the back of the head up towards the ceiling. Imagine there's a helium balloon attached to the back of your head, pulling you up. So you feel light. Okay? Relax, give it a big shake out, and then find your way back there again. So without me saying all those cues, I'll go through them in a sec, but first of all, I want you to find yourself back to that good posture. Make sure you're relaxed. You're probably looking like you're about to be shot right now. I want you to be standing straight, but relaxed. This is our natural standing position. This is where we go back to. If we hadn't had all of modern life being applied to us, all our time seated, all our time rolled over our phones and stuff, this is where kind of we're designed to be. But it's probably a position that feels quite different to you at the moment because we don't spend a lot of time here. So just to walk through it again, equal weight toe to heel, thighs relaxed, neutral pelvis, tailbone tucked under, neutral rib cage. So rib cage floating above the pelvis. We're not tipping the water out the front or the back of either. Shoulder blades together and down, tall neck. That's where we're going to come back to when I'm saying all through today's session in terms of your posture. That's where we're coming back to. That's where I want you to come back to in life. Try walking down the road in that posture. Not like, oh my God, everything gripped, relaxed, but aligned. Okay, from there, we are going to go into, in fact, we're going to do that now slightly. So we're going to go into a walk. We're going to take 3 steps, and then we're going to drive 1 knee forwards. Hold it for 3 seconds, walk 3 more steps, drive the next knee forwards. With that walking, with that knee drive, all the things we just talked about. So we're not going back into our normal walk. All of that alignment, all of that balance. When we drive the knee forwards, it's a knee drive forwards. It's not a foot drive forwards. So 3 steps, drive the knee, 3 steps, drive the knee. Sorry, and hold for 3. 3 steps, drive the knee, hold. 3 steps, drive the knee and hold. Keep doing that, count for yourself. As you drive that knee forwards, thinking about your balance, thinking about making sure we're still looking forwards, not looking down at the ground. Think about your hips staying aligned. We'll talk more about this later on in the session, but as I lift up one leg, I don't want the hip to come out to the side or drop down. I want to keep that glute engaged. You know, when we did the knee hug at the beginning and we got that glute going, think about engaging that glute to stabilize your hips as the knee comes out in front. Okay, from there, we are going into your main set. So we won't use weights probably on that first round unless you want to. If you want to, grab them. But I'd rather you just think about your technique for this first round. So we're doing lunges. If you want to put your shoes back on, put your shoes on. If you normally have shoes on, keep them on. If you don't normally have shoes on, keep them off. I would say we can talk way more about barefoot versus not barefoot, but that would be my normal rule. If you don't normally wear them, fine. If you do normally wear them, put them back on. So into your lunge. Let's start with our left leg behind us, our right leg forwards. Pretty much as far apart as is comfortable. It's probably more further apart than you think. From there, we're going to drop down into a lunge. So our back leg, our left knee is just off the floor. Our front shin, this is where I want you to start your focus. Our front shin is vertical. So what people normally get wrong on a lunge is that their knee starts going forwards. I want you to make sure that the knee is over the ankle, not over the toe. Come back up, drop down. So we're just going to keep on going up and down, static, feet aren't moving, keeping that front shin vertical. So number 1, thinking about making sure that knee doesn't slide forwards at the front. So we're dropping down, not forwards. Number 2, maintaining that neutral pelvis. So we're not coming down and tipping all the water out the front, keeping that tailbone tucked under as we go down. Number 3, thinking about what our torso is doing. So we're not looking down at the floor. If we look down at the floor, everything else follows. We're not rounding the shoulders in. We're still thinking about shoulder blades together and down. Hips facing forward. Core engaged. core supporting our upper body. So we're not leaning, we're not crumpling. Number 3, we're almost there. Number 3, engaging our glutes to keep that front knee facing forward. So let's swap sides. In fact, I'm going to do this one front on the leg. So exactly the same, dropping down. So we swap sides, we're doing exactly the same. As I drop down, I want to make sure that my hips stay level. So I'm not dropping one hip down or the other. My hips aren't coming out to the side and my knee isn't collapsing in. So think about having a headlight in that front knee. Front knee is facing forwards. Headlights in the hips and in the knee, everything's facing forwards. If it helps, you can put your arms out in front, just to remind your body that's where everything's going, aligning forwards. If you've got into the habit of your body collapsing forwards as you go down, try putting a hand either with a light weight, a water bottle or something, or just your hand above your head. You'll find it a lot harder to collapse forwards if you've got that weight above you. Lovely. From there, we're doing side lunges. So I'd say keep these ones without weight still. Legs fairly wide. Now with the different types of side lunges, the ones we're doing today, I want you to keep your knee underneath your hip. So I'm going down on the side, I'm going to my left side. As I go down, my left knee is facing forwards and is underneath my hip. So it's not out to the side, it's not in, my foot's not wider than it. I'm coming down, left hip facing forwards. I'm getting a gentle stretch into that right leg, the straight leg. Again, if it helps, you can go arms forwards to keep everything facing forwards. So I'm not having my hips facing back into the center, my hips are facing forwards. Keeping on going, a few more. You guys carry on, so I'm just trying to stop. I can see the light flickering again. It's no better, is it? It looks like I'm in a disco. There we go. Lovely. And then top side. So exactly the same to the other side. Check that technique again. You might find it's quite different from one side to the other. We all have imbalances. Knee is facing forwards. The other thing to be looking out for, so keeping that knee facing forwards, we're basically doing a single leg squat on the bent leg side, but we've got the other leg out for support and to be working down the inside of that leg. And we've got that sideways movement. If we're runners, we spend so much time, well, pretty much all triathletes, spend time going forward, we don't spend very much time going sideways. So working on this control so that we don't go too far, but we go far enough. Then the other thing we want to be looking out for is that we're coming backwards into that single leg squat. So the hips come backwards, we're working into your glutes. You should feel your glute working as you sit back into it without leaning forwards too much. If we lean forwards too much, we're not working that glute. So sit back into it. Whoop. If you're worried that you're going to fall over backwards, do it with a wall behind you. You can't fall over backwards then because the wall's going to catch you. You're not trying to hit the wall, but you just know it's there to catch you if you need it. Last two. Lovely. Back to our press-ups. So elevated press-ups if you're doing elevated press-ups. So on a wall. So we could be on a wall. We could be on a chair. The main thing is we want our chest to come down to the point of contact wherever our hands are. Clearly, I'm going to headbutt the wall if I got my chest all the way down here, but you get the idea. So having your hands as high as they need to be able to get that full range of motion. Equally, as I say, it could be on the chair, could be on the floor. A few more, making sure your elbows are pointing back towards your toes. They're about 45 degrees. They're not out to the sides. Making sure you're a plank, so core engaged, tilting from your toes. Okay. From there, we're going into our calf raises. Now, I haven't done these for a few weeks, I will be completely honest, while I've been away. So let's see how they go. Full range of motion. So single leg. If you've been given different advice by your physio, if you're meant to be doing different types of calf raises for whatever reason, please do those now. Defer to your physio if you've been given specific types of calf raises. But if you're just normal, then we're doing down and up. Down, hold. Sorry, get me ups and my downs mixed up. So up, hold, down, up, hold, down. That kind of tempo. We're dropping our heel all the way down. We're coming all the way up onto our toes. Heel goes down, up onto our toes. Make sure you're not losing that range of motion. If you need to take a quick break, shake it out, that's fine. I'd far rather you're getting that full range of motion than just going up and down for the whole time, but not actually working the full range. So yes, we want to get the reps up, but we want that quality. Shake it out if you need to. I definitely need to. Don't worry if you haven't been doing them while I've been away or whatever reason you haven't been doing them, it'll come back. Lovely. Swap sides. So I know if I haven't done them for a few weeks, it takes me a few weeks just to get back into being able to do that full set. That's fine. You work at your fitness. If you're not doing it, you lose the fitness. You don't lose it really quickly. You don't lose everything. We've been working on these, or if you have been working on these long term, it takes a long time to lose the fitness that it took a long time to build up. Ten seconds to go on this side. Good work. Okay, from there, we still stay on your step. If you've gone away because you've got a step in another room, just come back and have a quick watch and then you can go off to your step again. You can do these on the ground, but it's a little bit easier on the step. So I'm going to stand on my left side, and if I stand just normally, my hips are level. I'm then going to relax my left glute. My right hip has dropped down. This is not working. This is relaxing. I'm then going to re-engage my left glute. My hips come back to level. So I'm relaxing, hip drops down, engaging, hips come back to level. What I'm not doing is hitching up my right hip. There's no work happening on the right side at all. All the work is done on the left. I'm not doing a squat on my left side. My leg is pretty much straight. It's relaxed, but it's straight. All the work is coming from that left glute. I engage, hold it for about 2 seconds, relax for less than a second. I'm not trying to teach my body to do the relaxing bit. I'm trying to teach my body to do the engaging bit. If you've not done these with me before, just keep focusing on what I'm saying. So engage the glute, tuck the tailbone under, draw up at the front just slightly, engage that glute. Think back to what we did at the beginning where you hugged your knee, that same idea, then relax for a second, come back. You should be getting towards a kind of 6 out of 10 level of work being done by that standing leg glute by now. If you're not, hold it for a little bit longer at the top, make it a really focused engage. Then let's swap sides, exactly the same on the other side. Might feel harder on one side than the other. You can definitely hold on for balance on these ones. I'd far rather you're focusing on what's going on with your bum than worrying about balance. Okay, from there, we're going to go back to our lunges, but I want you to think about that control through your hip, through your glute there. So this time we're going to do alternating lunges. We're going to step backwards. So if you start at the front of the space you're working in, step back with one leg, come back to the front, step back with the other leg. Just start off on that, get yourself happy with the motion. Then if you're happy, add in some weights, just holding them at each side or one in the middle, whatever works for you. And I want you to think all the same things. Make sure that front shin's vertical. You're allowed to look down for a quick second at the beginning, making sure that front shin is vertical, but then learn what that feels like rather than having to look down on every one. Ooh, losing my balance. If you are losing your balance, do make sure that you're stepping back with your feet hip width apart. You don't want to be on a tightrope. If you need to step and then drop down, that's fine. Thinking about keeping that torso upright. Remember, if the torso is leaning forwards, drop down one of those weights, just put your arm up in the air above you and focus on keeping that torso upright, and then thinking about engaging those hips. So think about that hip drop exercise we just did. Engage those hips. So as I drop down, my hips aren't going squiggly side to side, not dropping down. I'm keeping that nice and solid, stable through my hips. A few more on each side. So go back to those headlights in your hips, in your knees. Make sure everything's pointing forwards. One more on each side. Lovely. Into your side lunge, you can keep one weight in each hand. They're getting away a little bit, so I tend to just go to one in the middle. Up to you though. And we're going to go side to side. So same focus as before, knee underneath the hip, but rather than doing all the set on one side, we're going side to side. So we're dropping down, knee underneath hip, drop to the other side. If you can set yourself up so you can see what you're doing, so either a mirror or just your camera doing selfie mode so you can see yourself, so you can check that you're managing to keep that knee underneath the hip, keeping everything facing forwards as you go. Still focusing on that core. So we're engaging through the core, we're not just flopping. Again, if you need that wall behind you to give yourself the confidence to get the hips back, I'm not using it as a target, I don't have to touch it, but I know I can't fall over because it's there, so I can be focused and confident on getting my hips back behind me without needing to lean forward to kind of counterbalance it. Last one to each side. Lovely. Back to those press ups. So remember the position. If I'm looking from above, I'm going to see an arrow, not a T shape. So elbows about 45 degrees behind us. We're on our wall, we're on our chair, whatever it is that means that we can get our chest down nice and low, tilting from the toes. So keeping our plank nice and steady, not with our hips in the air, and definitely not with our head dabbing down towards the wall. Our head stays in line with our back. Last one. Lovely. Half raises again. So we're going all the way down, all the way up, off we go. For anybody watching this in, well, today is, I think, the 18th of May. I am doing a presentation next Tuesday, the 23rd of May, I think. I'll put details up. If you're new to triathlon, it's a beginner's introduction to triathlon. I'm working with Fund Her Tri, a brilliant organisation working to get more women into triathlon. And so I'm doing a presentation with them on, swap legs, sorry. If you're doing your first triathlon, or if you haven't done many and you've got your first one coming up this year, and you just want a kind of reminder on how it all goes, what you need to think of, join me on that, and I'll just be talking you through just some simple things to think through, so that to reduce the stress, so you go into the day feeling kind of confident rather than worrying about all the things that you might have forgotten or whatever. I'm pretty sure it's 6 o'clock next Tuesday. I can't remember the details, but if you have a look on my social media at Feel Fit with Lucy, there should be something on there at least by this weekend. Hopefully before that, but I'm not in the office much in the next day or so. In fact, I think it's at 7 o'clock. I'm doing about 3 presentations on Tuesday evening, so I'm trying to remember which one it is. But anyway, have a look on my social media. You'll need that for the link anyway. And I hope to see you there. Last few on this side. Lovely. Good work. So back to our lunges again. Optional with weights or not. I'll show you how I would do them, but up to you how you do them. So now we're kind of putting all this together into something a little bit more dynamic. So I'll show you what the whole thing is and then how I'm going to put it together. So you're going to start, if we start on our left foot, step your right foot back, all the same things to be thinking about: vertical shin, torso nice and steady, neutral pelvis. Then we're going to drive the right knee forwards. Come back, so the left foot stays on the ground the whole time. Drive the right knee forwards. And then at the end, we're going to finish with 10 seconds, optional, where we jump. Now, if you're doing it with weights, I would do the weights for the main part of the set, but then I'd drop the weights down for that 10 seconds. I would try and join in your arms as well for power. Think about which way your arms go. You don't have to think about it when you walk, but suddenly we get all kind of mal-coordinated. My arm comes forward when my knee comes forward. So left knee, right arm, left knee. I think I just said the same thing backwards, but you know what I mean. Okay, so we're going to do in 50 seconds, lunges, drop the weights down. If you're using them, 10 seconds with that hop. If you shouldn't be hopping because of injuries, if you're feeling absolutely knackered, don't hop because it's going to go wrong. So just carry on doing what you've been doing. Okay, off we go. So stepping the right foot back, drive the knee forwards. We're not hopping yet. Thinking about our technique. So making sure we step far enough back that our front shin's vertical, making sure we maintain our neutral pelvis, making sure that as we get tired, we don't start to sag through that midsection. Your core is strong enough to support your upper body. Use it. Helium balloon, lengthening your body up towards the sky. No sagging. Think about that hip drop exercise we did. Stabilize through the hips. Keep those hips stable. 5 seconds to go, and then we're going into our hops. If you want to, if you don't want to, carry on doing what you're doing now. So weights down, whoop, and off we go. Hop, hop. If your arms are wrong, just think left knee forwards, right hand forwards, and vice versa. Last one. Good work, well done. Swap sides. Back, let's give your legs a break. Do a quick round of your press ups, then we'll come back and do the other side. So remember which leg you had going forwards. I had my right knee driving forwards. Double check you know what you were doing. So press ups, 30 seconds. Lovely. On to the other side for our lunges. So we're stepping our left foot back, then drive the knee forwards. Thinking about that control, thinking about your posture. Getting those hips working, making sure your hips aren't waggling one side to the other. Anything that you can see, and again, try and get that mirror up or film yourself so you can look back. Anything that's weak in this chain, so if you're losing that neutral pelvis, if you're crumpling through your core, if your shoulders are rounding forwards, if your hips are dropping, your knees dropping in, you can probably guarantee that's happening when you're running. Yes, we're using weights here, but you're going to be running for longer than 60 seconds. So anything that you're spotting, not quite right here, is probably happening when you're running. Into your final 10 seconds, weights down into that hop. So work on it here. Oh. Work on it here so that you can address it in the running as well. Part of the running is the mindfulness of what we're doing. Talking of which, losing my arms and my legs there. Good, you're done. Part of it is the mindfulness, connecting brain to body. Part of it's the strength. And part of it is just doing those drills over and over time so your body gets used to it. So that brain-body coordination, those neural pathways building up. So the more that we do it in training and drills, the more we can then take it through into our running. Don't overthink your running. Like I say, when you're running, don't be thinking about trying to get that leg out behind you. Don't be trying to think left glute engage, right glute engage. You can't do that fast enough if you're doing, 180 steps, 160, 180 steps a minute, whatever. Just think about engaging. Do those drills before. Not doing all those lunges before you've been knackered, but doing the walk drills that we did. Then you can take that out into your running. And if you do that over time, it's not going to switch overnight. But if you do it over time, it builds up. You build that connection from the brain to the body. You build the stability, the strength to be able to do it. And it starts to come through. Good work, guys. I hope all that made sense. If it didn't, just drop me a comment in the comments. And I'll do my best to answer any questions. Look forward to seeing you again next week. Take care.